The Foundry. Old, gray, and metal to the core.
So, hey, I'm Bruce Moore. Welcome to The Foundry. That's my partner, Nick. Nick, you want to introduce yourself?
Yes, I am Nick Ettinger, and I'm the former vocalist of Possession and current vocalist of Frost Like Ashes and Ninth Sphere. And, the Foundry is just two old metal guys doing a couple of metal reviews each month, and then one non-metal review. And so if you guys want to subscribe and like this video, and then comment below things that you would like us to check out, whether it's metal genre or just in the rock genre, that would be awesome.
Sweet. And so I know this episode we're kind of doing something a little bit different. We're doing our favorite two picks from, I guess, 21 or the last year, or however we want to phrase that. And I'm going to let you start, and it's not really far from your wheelhouse when you picked this, but you totally blew my mind with this band. I'll let you go ahead and introduce them and get started.
All right. So the first pick that I had was a band called Ramchet, and they are from Eastern Europe, so not really a place that you would look to for, black metal and all of that, or just for a band in any respect. So this album is called Zanilo Lesom, and I failed to look up the other song names and how to pronounce them, so it's going to be a little bit difficult. But this was a black metal release that you actually brought to me last year to do a little YouTube review on. And after listening to it for a few times, it easily became my most played album of the year, which is why it ended up getting on this list. Before I guess I go into the stuff that I have for it, what thoughts did you have? Because you just more recently listened to it.
So I know I gave it to you, but I have so many other things going on that I never really spun it until you picked it for this review show. And like I said, my wife was out doing something and I was sitting in the car and I go, what the heck, I'll put it in now. I was totally blown away. It was not what I was expecting at all. So up front, I'm not the biggest black metal fan, or I am, but I don't know a lot about it. That's totally your wheelhouse. But right off the bat, it's so well produced, right, while still managing that raw black metal sound, if that makes sense. Other things I noticed, there's tons and tons of like tremolo picking and blast beats, and his vocals are grim. I wish I knew what he was saying because it's in, I think they're Slovakian, right? I believe they're from Slovakia, but there's lots of acoustic guitar breaks. There's lots of eerie spoken word breaks. I don't even know how to describe it any more than you really need to check this album out, because you blew my mind when you suggested I listen to it.
Yeah, I agree. It is black metal, but I don't know of another band really to compare it to. There are moments within it where you can say, okay, it sounds similar to this band or that band, or his vocals sound like this. But as a whole, there's not really anything to compare it to. It is, they definitely have their sound. Yeah. But every song sounds different. Like, you never know what to expect from 1 minute to the next when you're going through the songs. And you mentioned that the spoken word parts, not even all of those sound the same. So other bands like Dimmu Borgir or whatever might have spoken word parts, or Cradle of Filth. Danny does a lot of spoken word, but it's almost all the same. This one, it's whatever needed to happen in that part of the song. It's just crazy. And the guitar parts are really intricate. You may have like a section where one guitar is doing one thing and the other one is doing another, and then they swap spots, and the one takes over the main melody. And in one particular instance, then the other one actually started in with the vocal melody, which is it was so interesting and created such vast landscapes. It was just very enjoyable to listen to all the way through.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but this is, I mean, at the roots of this, even though it has all these changes, it's still black metal at the core, right?
Yeah, I would definitely put it into black metal. There isn't any other way to just say it. And I would say it's in its tones. It's not heavy. It's not a heavy record. There's probably one track that's kind of heavy, but for the most part, it's more what you would expect black metal guitars to sound like. But like you said, it's very well produced. It's not low budget. It's not lo-fi in any way. But it's very a much more treble based album. It's creating atmospheres rather than getting down and hammering you with some super heavy riffs.
I also found it interesting that some of the songs are, and this is how I can tell when I'm really a fan, because some of the songs are really long and I didn't lose interest at all. I mean, there's enough going on, and, you know, female vocals and keyboards and acoustic guitar. There's enough going on with time changes that kept me right through it. And I didn't realize, you know, I was listening to this excessively long song, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it takes you, I think I said this maybe in my review, it takes you on a journey.
Yeah.
Even through the album as a whole, it does that. So if you're to listen to it straight through, it just goes from one song right into the next song, right into the next song, and just the flow just keeps going there. So I don't know. It was my favorite album of the year. And actually, you mentioned about some of the long songs. This was actually the shortest album of the 4 that we selected this time.
I know.
By far, actually. So my top track, I have no idea how to pronounce this, but it's Laz Azich, probably something close to that. So you'll figure it out if you take a listen to it. And it's near the beginning.
So mine would be, and I'm going to butcher it too, Ladova Plan. That's probably my Americanized version of what it's called, but that song blew my mind.
Yeah, that's fantastic as well. So, cool. Well, let's move on to one of yours. You had 2 very different ones.
Yeah.
You get to pick which one you want.
So I'm going to go with the one I think was probably my favorite of the year. And I come from the metal background, but a different side of it than you do, you know, growing up in the hair metal sort of stuff. And while I appreciate black metal and I'm learning about it as we go along, I think thrash was probably my first exposure to what I would say something outside of hair metal, you know, with stuff like Metallica and Testament in the late 80s or whatever. And holy crap, Exodus is back is all I've got to say. This record, Persona non grata, is absolutely amazing. I mean, you know, they've been through different singers and they've been through different band members, and drummer has just beat cancer, and, you know, they're doing all this stuff, but some of the records in the past were good, but not great. Persona non grata, I think, is great from the top to bottom.
Yeah, I totally agree. You know, and though I'm more into black metal scene now, I also, you know, kind of formed my metal tastes in the 80s. And so, you know, Metallica, Slayer, Testament, Anthrax, right. All of those were in fact, I had my first personalized license plate that said thrash.
Oh, nice.
So, I wish I still had it, but yeah. So it was definitely part of my life too. And this album is everything that you wanted back in the 80s, but the production is just absolutely stellar, and his voice is fantastic. And it sounds, you know, for the most part, fresh and new. I mean, this is an hour's worth of thrash, so it's a long album, but but it's great. Yeah.
So it definitely is a beating from start to finish. And you mentioned it because it's part of my notes here. My notes said, they have retained their original 80s sound, but their elements and touches of modern layering and, modern production. And honestly, I don't know how Zetro does it, but he might sound the best he's ever sounded on this record.
Yeah, I totally agree. There wasn't vocal-wise, there wasn't a weak spot. And he does a number of different vocals. And Exodus, Sodom, Destruction, all of those. I listened to a little bit back in the 80s, but then as things progressed for me, I didn't listen to them a lot. So I can't say, for sure how varied his vocals have been over the last few albums, but he does a number of different vocal styles and he nails them all.
And so there's a bunch of things. I mean, I'm a Holt fan from the beginning anyway, so Holt always comes up with great catchy riffs, and they're right on. But I also thought a good nod to the 80s thing that we were talking about, or to the old school fans, is a guitar solo by Rick Hinault, I think his name is, in Lunatic Liar Lord. And it's nice to see, the original member back in, even if he's not in the fold, but at least, lending his hand to it. And I think that just added a really cool nostalgic touch. Nostalgic, I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. The album starts off with Persona Non Grata, and that thing just it kicks you right in the face, as Loudness would say, right from the beginning. And gets you in the mood for what the rest of this album holds. Slipping Into Madness is just an absolute headbanger as well. What was your favorite track?
Oh man, I don't know. I really like Slipping Into Madness, but I like Prescribing Horror a lot, and even Clickbait.
On my list.
I think this whole record though was totally made for the pit. It's a shame we don't have shows right now because this is like a pit igniter.
Yep. Yeah, the beatings will continue until morale improves. Oh, I actually was sitting there listening to that song, imagining what I would be doing in the pits.
Yeah.
because that one shifts. That one's like the consummate thrash metal song. It shifts and it has all the elements in it, and you're doing slow headbangs, you're doing fast headbanging, you're slamming each other in the pit. It's a great song.
Yeah, that was their first single, I think, too. So that was that's the way they started this whole back in like the fall. That was like to whet your appetite, and boy, the record didn't let me down at all.
No. So I agree.
So if I'm going to just sum it up, I think if you're a fan of heavy metal or the thrash metal side, or even a fan of Exodus at all, this is definitely an album you want to check out for sure.
Yeah, you don't want to miss out on it, and maybe there will be shows coming up here soon, I hope, and we'll get to experience that live.
So now we're going to go to your second one. I'll go ahead and let you introduce it.
Yeah, this one is a band. They haven't been around terribly long, called Symphony of Heaven, also another black metal release. It's called Maniacal Entropic Discordium. And it is a pretty long album, 78 minutes, 12 songs, which is pretty long for a black metal album. But when I was... And this was a late release. This was in December, so I hadn't had a lot of time to listen to it. But the first few times I listened to it, I really felt like they are doing something that is on par with Satyricon or on par with like Samael, like to that level. They haven't been around very long, so it may not be quite as mature as what those bands have gotten to. I guess my only knock on it is that they don't seem to have solidified their own sound yet. I don't know if you got a chance to listen to this much or kind of caught on, but each song kind of has its own sound, and there are there's some continuity between them,
right?
But it kind of it encompasses a lot of different black metal styles, when you take the album as a whole. And in fact, the last song isn't even a black metal song. It's a great song, but
Right.
it's definitely not a black metal song. So I'm excited to see what's coming up on it, but it is very very well composed. The guitar work is fantastic. There's great guitar solos, and which a lot of times you don't get when you're doing black metal. There's really, really good acoustic parts. There's one entire song, Amid the Righteous Oaks, that's an instrumental, and it's like 5.5 minutes long, and it's not boring. So how do you do that in black metal? So I felt like it was a great feat.
So, I mean, you talked about the guitars already, but what I really noticed, and especially in the instrumental, was the drumming. Mason Mason Beard is his name, and he is quite the drummer. And he keeps this thing going from start to finish. I think he's got, he's right in that pocket, that black metal pocket, and he's got it going steady.
And some of it's fast and some of it's slow. And it was, I remember that after listening to it the first time, my thought about the drumming was that it was recorded perfectly. Yeah. It's right where it needs to be. It's not overpowering. It's not vacant. It's not absent. It is exactly where you want it to be. And it was great.
Yeah, I liked it. So as far as tracks for me, Soul Wretch started off, I don't know if that was for me. It wasn't what I was expecting. I don't know what I was expecting, I guess, but that wasn't what the one that got me. But I really love Grieving and Darkest Night. Mm-hmm. Both of those were standouts to me for sure.
Yeah. The Grieving is on my list, and then the Darkest Nights is my top pick for this album. So my hope is that they can kind of hone their sound, and maybe, do they need 12 songs on an album? Probably not. So maybe cut it down to 8 really, really solid songs like those songs.
Right. I mean, they're a young band, like you said, so I think this there's definitely we're going to hear a lot more from them in the coming years, hopefully anyway, and I think they just get better from here.
Yep, I agree.
Sweet.
All right, so your last one is quite a bit different from the ones we've talked about so far.
Yeah, and it's a monster. It's 2 albums, like 15 tracks. I'm talking about Mastodon, Hushed and Grim. I don't know what you think of Mastodon. I've kind of been a fan from way back, Crack the Sky, maybe. I don't know when that even was, maybe in the early 90s. I'm not sure when Crack the Sky was.
Yeah,
way back then, I'm thinking early 90s. And I've always been a fan of the band, and they've kind of been, maybe on that outside of metal almost. It's almost hard rockish at times. I know you can correct me if I'm wrong, I think, but I really dig what they do. And there's a reason they're so huge. And there's a reason I think they can pull off a 15-track album is because their songwriting is pretty crazy.
I was stunned when I saw the length of the album. It's almost 90 minutes. It's almost an hour and a half of music. And I have not really been a listener to Mastodon. I can't even remember if I've listened to them. I mean, I must have listened to them right at the get-go,
right?
Way back in the early 90s, but I haven't been a listener of them. And so I was kind of surprised at, I would say, hard rock. I would say progressive rock, which I did not, when I think of Mastodon, because I haven't really listened to them, I would have not put them into that category. So that was a surprise to me, and it took me a few tracks to kind of wrap my head around that. But like you said, hard rock, it is kind of on the edge of metal. It's not, and I felt some songs probably fit some songs on this album probably fit where they want to be. Mm-hmm. And where they're the best, and then some other ones that actually had a little more metal elements weren't necessarily where they felt comfortable, especially for the vocals.
And I think that well, the drummer sings as well, which is an interesting thing. Then, but they had a lot of like weird jazzy sort of maybe flavorful jazz things into their songs. I mean, there's an 8-minute tune. I think it's Gobbler of Dregs is like over 8 minutes, and
Yep.
it goes everywhere.
Yeah.
We were talking earlier about Ramchat going everywhere and adding that song includes all kinds of genres. All just kind of a melting pot of genres, I guess, into one.
Yeah, and that song actually was one of the top picks for me, and in the list of the ones that I felt were where they were in their element. Obviously they're a band that's been around forever.
Oh yeah.
They must have a ton of releases. So who am I to say where their element is? But just from listening to this album, that's where they felt really comfortable. I kind of I caught a little bit on certain songs of a Dark Tranquility vibe, maybe a Fate's Warning vibe. Although both of those bands are decidedly metal,
right?
Whereas this I don't think you should classify it as metal necessarily. I think there's some songs, there's moments.
Yeah, I think they straddle it for sure, but I think it's really emotional too. I mean, songs like Gigantum, is that the right? Gigantium.
Yeah.
That's a super emotion-driven song, and it's, I don't know. It's...
Yeah. But then they have songs like Eyes of the Serpents, which has just a fantastic guitar solo. Okay. So just when you think, but I guess it probably was, it's a guitar solo that could fit on a progressive rock album. When you say?
Oh yeah, I think so. And it's funny because I'm not the biggest fan. If I look back at my history of listening to things, I'm not the biggest fan of progressive stuff. A lot of times I think it's more an exercise of overplaying and look at me shred, I'm from Berkeley, whatever. But for some reason, this band has always grabbed me, and I think they do it really well.
Well, the one aspect that I got out of the album is it's all, some songs very strongly, it's almost a 70s hard rock vibe to them. Right. Like they're pulling that into their songs. And that's probably why you connect with that a little bit more than other progressive bands that are just trying to play as many notes as they can or whatever, because this really has the down to earth feel to me.
And I also think that there's a sort of, I don't know if I should say talent, but a sort of way of doing things where you can play 90 miles a minute and you can add all those triplets or whatever you want to do, but not doing it sometimes, holding it back for the sake of the song is sort of excellent as well, if that's the word I want to use. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. It's almost like what we were talking about with Billy Idol earlier, where his ability to hold back his vocals actually was where his strength was lying, and where his strengths were. And I think this album displays that definitely. It's I don't know. Would you say it's bluesy at all, or like, I don't know. There's just something 70s rock. Just
I could see the 70s progressive rock, like maybe a heavier sort of Kansas-y sort of thing. And maybe, but not too. I mean, they definitely straddle the fence at times. It becomes heavy. It's got jazz. I don't know how to really confine them, and maybe I don't want to confine them to a genre. I just love it. I mean, I listen to it all the time in my car. It's almost on, spin daily.
Yeah, it's another band that I couldn't find a band that compares to them. I feel like that they're in and of themselves their own genre.
Right. And obviously people get them because they can sell out arenas. They're not a club band. And I believe they're Grammy winners, right?
I wouldn't doubt it. Like I said, I don't know a whole lot.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I remember somewhere down the path that they have a Grammy for something. Maybe the last one. But anyway,
what was your top pick for this album?
Well, that's tough. So
very difficult, I imagine.
Yeah, so that's tough. But I really liked Gigantum. Gigantium. I liked Tear Drinker a lot, but I think The Beast was probably one of my favorites.
Yeah. The Beast is on my list of the songs that I felt they really were in their element. But Tear Drinker was by far my favorite track on the album. It has great vocal lines. And there was even little moments where the vocals played right along with the melody of the rhythm guitars and then went away from them all in the same line. It was just really well done. And so yeah, Tear Drinker was my pick for the album.
Sweet. So I want to say before we end this thing that I appreciate you doing this because I'm being turned on to stuff that I didn't even know. Well, I mean, I knew they existed, but I probably wouldn't have popped it in because there's so much else going on. And so, it's constantly coming at me doing the podcast and doing all this other stuff that I don't have time to listen to everything. And you picked that Ram Chat is definitely going to be in my playlist. So I appreciate, what we're doing here. Even if nobody else is listening, I'm learning about new music.
Well, and I would have never listened to Mastodon. I mean, how many years has it been? I haven't yet. So, so it is, it's a great exercise, even if we get to some albums that aren't really our thing, or maybe we end up not even liking them. We haven't really hit one of those yet, but I'm sure it may happen in the future. It's doing the same thing for me, and any, at this age, I'm understanding that this is how you spread your horizons and become better as a musician yourself and better as a listener of music. And so I guess what we're saying to each other, I think we both hope is going to be the effect that we have on anybody that's watching these. That don't just count them out because you didn't like something they did in the past. Take these albums and at least listen to them once through, and then give us your opinion. So,
I agree, and also I think I was when I was prepping for this. I think it's like the old tape trading days, right? I'm learning about all these new bands from you. It's like we're in the record store trading tapes or something.
Yeah, it's quite fun.
It is. I appreciate it. So anyway, if you're listening and you made it this far and you care, please go check out all 4 of these bands, support them, and let us know what you think. And like Nick said earlier, if you want to throw suggestions what to listen to, metal or not, it's up to you. Comments are below, and please subscribe as well.
Ever wonder what a punch from Elton John feels like?
Or how you'd cope with having turned down the chance to be in Nirvana?
Or what signal Keith Richards gives when he wants you to get the hell out of his hotel room?
Fans of Too Much Effing Perspective don't have to wonder, because they've heard these exact stories and a jillion others on our podcast. I'm Alex Hoffman, former tour manager for Radiohead.
And I'm musician and comedy writer Alan Keller. On the TMEP show, we get guests like Nancy Wilson from Heart, Jeremiah Freites from the Lumineers, and Modern Family's Julie Bowen to tell us things they may have only shared with their therapist, clergy, or a TMZ stringer.
So join us on Too Much Effing Perspective. That's EFFING Perspective. The only podcast you crank up to 11.